On the night Madeleine McCann disappeared, her parents, Kate and Gerry, made a vow. It wasn't a formal promise to the police or to the media, but a silent pact between the two of them. A sacred, yet terrifying, agreement that would bind them together forever, while simultaneously becoming their lifelong sentence. This vow speaks to a universal, primal fear. The terror of being faced with an impossible moral junction where upholding the truth means the immediate destruction of everything we love, and a profound falsehood becomes the only perceived way to protect the remnants of one's family. Can you even begin to imagine a scenario so extreme that you no longer recognize the person you would become? The Madeleine McCann case is not just the story of a missing child, it is the story of this pact. And today we are not simply listing established facts. We are stepping inside Kate and Gerry's excruciating moral dilemma. And I promise to show you that the key to this case lies not in a piece of forensic evidence, but in the answer to a single, haunting question. What does the crushing weight of a vow like this do to the human soul? To understand the pact, we must first understand the door that was closed before it was sealed. The door to apartment 5A in Praia da Luz. Behind it, 3 small children were sleeping. In front of it, at a restaurant 50 meters away, their parents, Kate and Gerry McCann, were dining with friends, doctors, respected professionals, in a moment of hard-earned relaxation, a scene of absolute normality. And it is precisely this veneer of normality that makes what comes next so terrifying. The inciting incident is not Kate's eventual scream. It is the decision that precedes it, the choice to leave the children unattended. That decision in itself is already a judgment hanging in the air. It connects us to an immediate discomfort, to the silent, analytical question, would I have done that? It is an act of negligence. And it is this negligence that became the fertile, terrible ground for a tragedy to unfold. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to be the first to receive notifications when there are new videos. When Kate McCann ran back to the restaurant screaming that Madeleine had been taken, the world saw the beginning of a disappearance case. But for the couple, something much darker may have begun right then, the birth of a secret. The main conflict was not, at first, against an unknown external person who may have caused harm. It was an internal, suffocating conflict against the crushing truth of their own failure as protectors. The world desperately wanted a monster, an external villain. And perhaps in that instant of absolute panic, they realized that providing the world with the external monster it demanded was the only way to immediately divert attention from the monster they feared most, their own negligence and its potential catastrophic consequences. The pact was not born from a cold, calculated plan. It was born from pure, primal panic. It was the desperate need to survive a catastrophic mistake that could destroy everything. The story of the abduction became the first wall built around the secret. The first vow was to never admit the initial failure, and from there, each subsequent statement would be another brick in that wall, trapping them deeper and deeper inside their own protective fortress. Once the pact was sealed, their lives transformed into a perpetual performance. Kate and Gerry McCann were suddenly no longer just parents. They were the protagonists of the biggest manhunt in modern history. And the entire world instantly became the audience, and critically, the jury. The tension dramatically escalated when the performance began to show cracks. The first obstacle was not the police, but human psychology itself. Grief has a universal language, and the couple's visible behavior, to many, did not speak it. Gerry's composure, his almost business-like focus on creating a media campaign, Kate's controlled pain, which rarely broke in public. To the skeptics, this was immediate proof of guilt. But does psychology offer a counter-argument to this universal judgment? Yes, a more complex one. Emotional numbness. Faced with extreme trauma, the mind can simply shut down entirely. The visible composure would not be an absence of feeling, but an excess of it, a tidal wave so overwhelming that the brain installs a circuit breaker to avoid complete collapse. The pact here gained a new layer. It was not just about deceiving the world, but about protecting their own minds. It became a profound, if dysfunctional, defense mechanism, a shared delusion where they clung to the abduction narrative because the alternative, the truth of what potentially happened in that room, was psychologically unbearable. And then science entered the scene, irreversibly complicating everything. The British specialist search dogs, Eddie and Keeler, trained to detect the scent associated with human remains and human fluid residue, alerted in the apartment and, chillingly, in the trunk of the car the couple rented 25 days after the disappearance. For the Portuguese police, led by Gonçalo Amaral, it felt like the missing piece of the puzzle. The detection of these critical scents confirmed the theory of a terrible event and a subsequent cover-up. But forensic science is a double-edged sword. The samples collected did not produce a definitive DNA result. There was the undeniable presence of scent, but not the final, conclusive proof. This scientific ambiguity was the fuel that ignited the public and legal debate. For those who believed in the pact, the dogs were absolute confirmation. For those who defended the couple, it was deeply flawed science and a prejudicial witch hunt. The McCann's pact was now not just against their own conscience, but against specialist animals, seasoned police officers, and a polarized global public opinion. The point of no return in the story of this pact doesn't happen in an interrogation room, but in a bookstore. In 2008, the chief inspector of the investigation, Gonçalo Amaral, published the book Maddie, The Truth of the Lie. In the book, he didn't just suggest, he directly accused. There was a devastating accident, a death, and a desperate cover-up. The theory that was a whisper in the corridors of the investigation was now a shout in the public square, printed in hundreds of thousands of copies. The book's publication was the event that made war inevitable. For Kate and Gerry, backing down was no longer an option. Admitting any failure, any small inconsistency, would be instantly framed as a confession. The pact of silence, which perhaps began as a frightened defense mechanism, now solidified into a relentless legal and media war strategy. They sued Amaral. The lawsuit dragged on for years, a brutal, agonizing battle for the narrative soul of the case. Who was the real victim in this prolonged battle? The couple who lost their daughter and was repeatedly accused, or the police inspector who dared to state what many were already thinking? This legal battle forced them to double down on the abduction story. Every interview, every anniversary, every appeal for information became another layer of concrete poured over the original secret. They could no longer retreat. The pact had led them to a point where the only way to survive was to keep performing, keep fighting, keep denying. They are trapped not by the law, but by their own vow. And their life became the personification of a philosophical dilemma. What happens when love, whether for a lost child, for your partner, or for your own social survival, forces you to build a prison around your own soul? And the question that remains, the hook that pulls us toward the central climax is, can a pact forged in panic truly be kept forever? Or is there always a breaking point, a moment when the truth, like relentless water, finally finds a crack to leak through? The strange, compelling heart of this story is not a piece of conclusive evidence or a recorded statement. It's the dilemma, the terrible dilemma that may have given birth to the pact. To truly understand it, we need to step inside apartment 5A on that night, in the critical minutes between the initial panic and the arrival of the authorities. Imagine the devastating scene. Your 3-year-old daughter is involved in a sudden tragic event, an accident, a fall, a severe reaction to medication. Guilt is instantly suffocating you. Panic is blinding you. You are in a foreign country. The law here is different. You know that if you call the police, the truth of the negligence will be exposed. You will be arrested. Your medical careers will be destroyed. Your other 2 children, the sleeping twins, will be immediately taken by local social services, entrusted to strangers in a strange land. You have lost 1 daughter. And now, because of the truth, you will inevitably lose your other 2. You will lose everything. Your partner, the person you love, looks at you, the same raw panic mirrored in their eyes. And then an idea emerges. A terrible and at the same time logically viable idea. A way out. What if we say she was taken? A kidnapping, an external enemy, a monster that is not you. It's a colossal falsehood, a monstrous lie. But it's a lie that might save what is left of your family. It's a lie that keeps your other children with you. This is the moment of the abyss. On one side, the truth, a certain immediate fall to destruction. On the other, the lie, a desperate blind leap into the darkness. They don't leap out of courage. They leap out of overwhelming fear. And in that instant, the pact is sealed. Not with words, perhaps, but with a look, a nod, a silent, terrifying understanding. You and me against the world, forever. The vow is not truly about hiding a criminal act. It's about protecting the living. It is the choice for the perceived lesser evil. And that choice, made in mere seconds, will define the rest of their existence. The door to the truth is not just closed, it is sealed, and the key is permanently swallowed. What happens to the soul after a vow like this? The pact worked in a way. They were not arrested. They did not lose their other children, but the vow that saved them also became their ultimate prison. A prison without physical bars, but infinitely more effective. The pact was not a life raft that saved them from drowning. It was an anchor that kept them together, yes, but that chained them forever to the bottom of the same dark ocean, unable to return to the surface, unable to breathe the free air of truth. Every interview, every public appeal, every controlled tear we see is the clanking sound of that anchor's chain. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the part of ourselves that we forcefully repress, the dark basement of our mind where we lock away the things that fill us with shame. The problem, Jung noted, isn't having the basement. We all have one. The problem is convincing yourself it doesn't exist. The McCann's pact was the decision to lock the door to that basement and permanently discard the key. But what is locked inside never truly stops scratching at the door. And the strange behaviors, the visible composure, the emotional rigidity are the subtle sounds of those scratches leaking through the cracks. The relentless multi-million-dollar search for Madeleine, which to the world appears as an act of tireless hope, takes on a new, painful meaning from this psychological perspective. It transforms into a form of penance, an external, frantic search for something they may deep down know will not be found, all to compensate for the refusal to do the internal search and face what is locked in the basement. It is a constant, desperate activity designed to drown out the internal hum of silence. And here lies the most invisible and corrosive emotional contradiction of all. The desperate desire for their daughter to be found alive versus the terrifying, paralyzing fear that the truth will be discovered. They are trapped in this unbearable duality. They need to keep the public hope alive for the charade to survive. But isn't their biggest nightmare perhaps not that Madeleine never appears, but that one day her body is recovered? Because on that day, the anchor would finally reach its final crushing destination, and the full weight of the pact would permanently destroy them. The ultimate resolution of the McCann's personal conflict, therefore, will never be found in a courtroom. The true resolution happened in that moment of the pact. By choosing the lie to protect their family structure, they definitively defined their own destiny. Their character arc is not one of fall, in the sense of being arrested, nor of ascension. It is an arc of stagnation, a perpetual straight line of performance. They are psychologically frozen in time, forever fixed in that night of 2007, condemned to relive the role of parents searching for a daughter they may know will never be found. Remember the philosophical anchor we started with, the phrase that what is done out of love is beyond good and evil. The McCann case stands as the dark, living rebuttal to that idea. It shows us that an act done in the name of love can, in fact, be the very source of infinite, ongoing suffering. The pact made to desperately avoid the pain of destruction generated a different, more silent and corrosive pain, the pain of living an inauthentic life. The resolution for them is the absence of peace. It is the conscious awareness that to the rest of the world they will always be the compelling protagonists of a tragic mystery, and to themselves the terrified guardians of a truth that consumes them from within. The door to the truth was sealed shut, and the sound of the key being swallowed echoes in every silence, in every interview, in every painful anniversary of the disappearance. In the end, what is the core lesson this story teaches us? The great lesson is not about police work or criminal investigation. It's about the weight of secrets. A secret, especially a shared one between a couple, is not a void. It is an imposing presence. It becomes the third occupant in the couple's bedroom. It is the unspoken word that renders all other words false. The McCann's Pact shows us that you might be able to hide the truth from the world, but you can never truly hide it from yourself, nor from the person who made the sacred vow with you. The secret becomes the hidden language of the relationship, an invisible chain that unites them in forced complicity and brutally separates them in profound solitude. And this makes me reflect on the impact our own small pacts of silence have on our lives. The small truths we sweep under the rug in our families or our friendships to avoid an uncomfortable conflict, to maintain a fragile peace. Not on the catastrophic scale of this tragedy, of course, but the core psychological mechanism is identical. Every unspoken truth creates a small fissure in trust, and over time these fissures can compromise the entire structure. The story of Kate and Gerry is a brutal, expensive reminder that peace built on a lie is more fragile than glass, and that sometimes the courage to face a painful truth is the only path to real, lasting freedom. My final objective statement after diving into the abyss of this case is that the biggest error in judgment we make as the public is trying to define Kate and Gerry McCann as simply good or evil. They became something far more complex and tragic, guardians of a secret. And a secret of this magnitude has a life entirely its own. It effectively rewrites your personality, dictates your public emotions, and controls your most basic reactions. The visible composure we see in them is not, in my view, that of a person who feels nothing. It is that of a psychological prisoner who, to survive the daily torture of unending scrutiny, has learned to dissociate, to create a shell, a skin of ice over a wound that never stops throbbing. The pact they made that night was not a single, isolated act. It is a vow that must be renewed every morning, every time they look into each other's eyes, every time they see a photo of Madeleine, every time a journalist asks the same question. They are not just living a lie, they are actively, consciously in service to it. And this servitude, this relentless devotion to a farce, is a form of self-imposed, infinite torture. Their true sentence is not one a judge could give. It is to live forever inside the crime scene, locked in the memory of that night, while pretending to the world that they are on the outside looking for a key they swallowed themselves. And now, after all this, after walking along the edge of this moral abyss, I really want to know what this story has awakened in you. Did you see a part of yourself reflected in their terrible dilemma? Do you believe that a pact like this can ever be justified by the profound love or need for family protection? Or is there simply no possible justification for such a monumental lie? Write it here in the comments. It doesn't have to be a thesis, but let it come from the heart, from the place this story touched you. And tell us what action you now feel you must take with your own truth. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about these arguments and theories? Does it give you a different perspective on the case? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive the latest notifications.